So we heard a very important verse. We ended on 4:10 last week. That when we hear about Krishna, but excuse me, by hearing about Krishna, many persons in the past became purified and they attained love for Krishna. So they attained love for Krishna because that is their desire, and Krishna fulfilled it. So then what happens when someone takes shelter of Krishna with something other than a desire to achieve love for him? What if someone is not interested in Krishna's service? What if somebody wants knowledge of Brahman and takes shelter of Krishna to attain it? The next verse explains how Krishna, the next verse that we're studying, the first one, excuse me. I think I have to go get some water. Sorry about this. Be back in a second. What happened? Oh, that was nice of you to pause. So how does Krishna reciprocate with all the different people? So text 11, famous verse, Ye yatamam prapadyante tam stataiva bhajamyaham amam manu vartate manusya partha sarvashaha. As all surrender unto me, I reward them accordingly. Everyone follows my path in all respects, O son of Pritha. So the first line, Prabhupada writes, everyone is searching for Krishna in the different aspects of his manifestation, right? In his material manifestation, some people are searching for, the Indian cricket team, wanting them to win. That is an aspect of Krishna's manifestation, material aspect. Nonetheless, but everything is Krishna. So everyone is following Krishna's path. One time Prabhupada was asked, how many disciples do you have? And he said, I have unlimited disciples. Some recognize, some know it, and some don't, because he's basically quoting this verse. So Prabhupada continues a few, 2 sentences later. Consequently, Krishna is the object of everyone's realization, and thus anyone and everyone is satisfied according to one's desires to have him. In the transcendental world, also, Krishna reciprocates with his pure devotees in the transcendental attitude, just as the devotee wants him. One devotee may want Krishna as supreme master, another as his personal friend, another as his son, and still another as his lover. Krishna rewards all the devotees equally according to their different intensities. I don't know why, something caught my throat, of love for him. So then a little later, he talks about the impersonalists. As for those who are impersonalists and who want to commit spiritual suicide by annihilating the individual existence of the living entity, Krishna helps also by absorbing them in his effulgence. And then a little later, for those who are fruitive workers, so now we heard about the impersonalists, now the karmis, the Lord awards the desired results of their prescribed duties as Yageshwara. And those who are yogis, seeking mystic powers, are awarded such powers. In other words, everyone is dependent for success upon his mercy alone. And all kinds of spiritual processes are but degrees of success on the same path. Unless, therefore, one comes to the highest perfection of Krishna consciousness, all attempts remain imperfect. So this is the big picture of Krishna. It's not just little ISKCON or something like that. Everyone in all the universes follow Krishna's path in all respects. Doesn't mean that they have bhakti, but it's like you're either serving Krishna's material energy or his spiritual energy. But either way, in one sense, you're serving Krishna in one sense. So a very broad-minded, you could say, verse showing us, how Krishna reciprocates with everyone ultimately. So then we could ask, if Krishna gives the soul whatever he wants, why don't more people surrender to him? Why do they worship others to fulfill their desires? So Krishna's going to answer that in the next verse. Kankshanta karmanam siddhim yajanta iha devata shipram hi ma'anuse loke siddhir bhavati karmaja. Men in this world desire success in fruitive activities. That's what they want. They want to enjoy here, and therefore they worship the demigods. Quickly, of course, men get results from fruitive work in this world. So Prabhupada writes in a little towards the end of the purport, the intelligent person is in Krishna consciousness, and he has no need to worship listen to this word, paltry demigods. Somebody maybe could look that word up, Paltry, on Google and see what it says. The paltry demigods for some immediate temporary benefit. The demigods of this material world, as well as their worshippers, will vanish with the annihilation of this material world. So we're supposed to respect the demigods, but they are paltry compared to Krishna. A little later, to achieve such temporary things, people worship the demigods, or not only demigods, right? People worship powerful men in this world. If a man gets some ministership in the government by worshiping a political leader, he considers that he has achieved a great boon. All of them are therefore kowtowing to the so-called leaders or big guns in order to achieve temporary boons. And they indeed achieve such things. Such foolish men are not interested in Krishna consciousness for the permanent solution to the hardships of material existence. So you see that. I mean, this happens here in America. I saw it in the government in India. If you help somebody get elected here in America, then they usually give you some position in the government. Here we go, adjective, of an amount very small or meager. She would earn a paltry 33 pounds more a month. Small, meager, insignificant, negligible, etc. Thank you. Very small and meager. So, although we respect the demigods, compared to Krishna, they're paltry. So also you see this certainly in India as well. And it's too bad, because if the people use that same energy to get the favor of somebody, if they did that to get the favor of Krishna, there would be so many pure devotees in this world, isn't it? But instead yeah. So now it's also interesting about this worship of the demigods, because when we worship Krishna for material benefits, Krishna may fulfill our desire, but he also purifies our heart. And that may take some time, and therefore the material reward may be delayed. And even once we get it, we probably don't even want it anymore. That's what happened to Dhruva Maharaj. That's what happened to so many devotees. Oh my God, I can't believe I wanted that. Now that I have you, Krishna. Oh, what a stupid desire. But when you worship the demigods for fruitive results, often the result comes more quickly. So one person worships the demigods for fruitive results, another worships Brahman, another was worshiping Krishna with devotion. So the question might be, does Krishna, he's the supreme controller, does he control our desires? Does he decide who's going to be materialistic, who's going to be a devotee, who's going to be a yogi? Is Krishna responsible for our suffering and enjoyment? Is he responsible for the pain and pleasure of everyone in this world? Good question, right? So text 13 addresses that. Chatur varnyam maya sristam guna karma vibhagasa tasya kataram apimam vidhi akataram avyayam. According to the three modes of material nature and the work associated with them, the four divisions of human society are created by me. And this is the key. And although I am the creator of the system, you should know that I am yet the non-doer, being unchangeable. So what does that mean? Let's try to understand that. So follow this logic a little bit, that if I award you some gift or some fruits or I give you the fruits of your work, I'm affected by that somehow or other, at least on some level, because I have interacted with you and what you have done. But Krishna's saying here, Krishna's saying he's the non-doer, he's unchangeable, he doesn't change. And he's aloof in that sense. So although he creates the varnashram system, he doesn't reward the results nor the reactions. And thus he is never contaminated or transformed. So this is hard to understand. Krishna is the Supreme Lord. He's the controller. He's the cause of everything. Yet he does not take responsibility for everything that happens to us. Each one of us has to take responsibility for what happens to us, even though ultimately everything depends on Krishna. So does that make sense? That's a really important point, super important point. Most people in the world do not understand. We have to take responsibility for our actions, even though everything ultimately depends on Krishna. He creates this world. He creates our bodies. He creates, he gives all the ingredients, but we have to take responsibility for our actions. Krishna only sanctions. And it's even against his own desire. He'd like to see us all be pure devotees, but he sanctions our rebellious activities, and not just the rebellious activities, and the results of those rebellious activities. So he's the cause of all causes. Nothing happens without his sanction. But for our rectification, he allows us to act as we like. And in the meantime, he's waiting for us to turn to him in devotion. So, any questions, comments on these verses so far?
Hare Krishna Prabhu.
Yes, Prabhu.
Coming to the second verse today, Prabhu, the demigods. As you know, Prabhu, having lived in India, you might have seen that there are so many demigods in India, of course.
33 million, only 33 million.
Yes, Prabhu. And each home has its own family deities as well, which need not necessarily be Krishna.
It's not necessarily Krishna, no.
But thing is, Prabhu, is okay in Bhagavan himself in Bhagavad Gita, I think chapter 7, I think, has not said that whatever your austerities or pujas or which you perform to any demigod, ultimately it will reach me. Bhagavan himself says that, no problem. Krishna himself says that, ultimately reach me. Then why Bhagavan himself says that people worshipping demigods are doing only for their material to satisfy material desires?
Where does he say that? I don't remember that. What he does say is Alpametasa, no intelligence. A person who worships demigods has no brain. That's what he says. In 723, I think it is. Let's see. So I'd have to see. Ultimately, I'm not sure about that verse that you quoted. Here we go, 723. Let me share my screen. I mean, I know this goes against what happens a lot in India, but that's because people don't read Bhagavad Gita. Antavantu palam tesham tatpavant alpa medasa. That's the word, alpa medasa. Devan deva jayo yanti mad bhakta yanti mamapi. Men of small intelligence, alpa medasa, worship the demigods, and their fruits are limited and temporary. Those who worship the demigods, so that doesn't say that everything goes to him. He says, if you worship the demigods, you go to the planets of the demigods. That's the paltry planets of this world. But my devotees ultimately reach my supreme planet. Now, it is true that worshiping the demigods is better than nothing, because at least you're accepting that there's a higher source of your pleasure than just your immediate sense gratification. And so there's some piety there, but it's alpa medasa. What we have to do is understand just how great Krishna is, how wonderful Krishna Bhakti is, and therefore how like if you didn't have to worry about the car insurance money or the would you rather have a 2002 Maruti 800 or the latest Mercedes Benz? Which one would you rather have, Prabhu?
Of course, I don't know. Maruti 800, Prabhu.
You'll take the Mercedes, right?
It's a human
tendency. There's no comparison. A Maruti 800 that's all rusty and people, chewed pan in their car and all that. You get it's been used by 10 different owners, or a brand new Mercedes Benz or BMW or something like that.
Not
S7.
all can afford, Prabhu. Not all can afford.
I know, but I'm saying I give you. But you're right. Not all can afford. Similarly, not everyone takes the bhakti. We heard what's that verse? Manusyanam sahasreshu kaschid yatati siddhaye yatatam api siddhanam kaschid meviti tapata. Out of many thousands amongst people, maybe one endeavors for perfection. And of thousands of those who endeavored for perfection, maybe one knows Krishna in truth. So we have this amazing opportunity. So let's not worry about the demigods. We offer all respects to the demigods. All respects to the demigods. but we worship Krishna. I think I told you that story. Prabhupada was once at, one of those altars that has like every demigod you can imagine on it. I'm sure you've all seen that, right? So one time Prabhupada was at a temple like that, and one of the devotees saw that he had taken some flowers and just placed them at one little corner of the altar. And after Prabhupada left, the devotee went there and said, oh, there was a little picture of Krishna in that one corner of the altar. And that's where Prabhupada put his flowers. Okay, so this is from Murari Madhava Prabhu. Well, it's not from him. As the water falls down in rain from anywhere in the sky, it finally reaches the ocean. The worship of any divine aspect ultimately reaches the Supreme Being. Where's that from, Prabhu? Murari Madhava.
Hare Krishna, Prabhu. This source I could not get, but this is very often quoted as Prabhuji was asking the question. This is the shloka actually, which says that actually.
Okay, well, you need to find, if you could try to find online what the source is, because it's definitely not the Bhagavad Gita.
Not from Bhagavad Gita, but
And
this
I don't think
shloka
it's the
is
Bhagavad
quoted
Gita.
by the people in general.
Yeah, no, I understand that, but it may not be. It may not be. It's not. It doesn't sound like the verse I just quoted, right? From Krishna's words, he says, if you worship the demigods, you don't go to Krishna, you go to the planets of demigods. Yes. But one who worships me ultimately reaches my planet. He also says, Yanti Deva Vata Devam. Where's that verse? Pratim Yanti. Where is that? Anyone know where that verse is? Yanti Deva Vata Devam. Anyway, he says, those who worship the demigods go to the planets demigods. Those who worship me live with me. So that's what Krishna says. Or here's another verse. Kamaistaisar Hritya Gana. Deprived of knowledge. Prabhadyantena Devata. Devata means demigods. Tamtam niyamam ashtaya prakritya niyatasvaya. Those whose intelligence have been stolen by material desires surrender unto demigods and follow the particular rules and regulations of worship according to their nature. So this may be a little hard for us to hear for some of us because we grew up worshiping demigods. I didn't grow up worshiping. I grew up worshiping, the Beatles or whatever. But you all may. So it may be hard because you have this culture. But we can't forget what Krishna says in the Gita. He keeps on pointing to his chest and says, manmana bhavamakta bhakto madhyaji mama namaskuru mame vaishasi satyam te. Mum. He's pointing to his chest and he's saying, surrender to me. That's the message of the Gita. Is that all right, Prabhuji? Am I speaking?
In this material world, Prabhu, instead of being atheist, at least if you are not able to, if you don't worship Krishna, at least worship some demigod.
I said that.
Don't be an atheist.
I said that. Yes, but remember that you're going to still be on the. Do you have? You know what? In India, do they have hamster wheels?
Yes, bro.
The hamsters just going, not getting anywhere and going. So you go up, you go down, you go up. You'll be on like a roller coaster ride of going to the. Oh, thank you. Chapter 9, verse 25. If you could quote that, Sananand Keshwapu in the chat, that'd be great. If you could find it. So it's okay. You're right. It's better than nothing. I already said that. But why not try to get the people who have that mindset to chant Hare Krishna, and then they.
Yes.
It's like a billion times better. It's not like 10 times better, 50 times better, because what's that verse? Sinye punye marcha loka vishanti. That when you go up to the demigod planet, after you use up your piety, then back to Hyderabad or wherever. Hyderabad if you're lucky, and maybe Romania if you're unlucky, or something like that. So it's There's a beautiful verse in the Chaitanya Charita. Maybe someone could find that also. Krishna Bhakti Rat. No, that's not the one. Suride Nishtaya. That firm faith in bhakti is there's understand that if I take shelter of Krishna, I have no need for anything else. Now, so that's the main thing. Okay.
Yes.
But yes, better than atheists to demigod worship. But most people, most demigod worship, they're nice people. Just tell them, hey, why don't you just try chanting Hare Krishna? Hey, Krishna, why not go to the source? You're going to the middleman. Why not, forget the middleman, go straight to the factory. TK?
Hare Krishna Prabhu, I have a question on 4.11.
All right.
The Lord is saying, Ye yatha mam prapadyante.
Yes.
And that prapadyante has been translated to be surrender.
Surrender, yes.
Yes. So can we say the first sentence applies to at least his devotees, and the second sentence, which is everyone follows my path in all respects, it encompasses non-devotees as well?
Yes, all of them as they surrender unto me. Tam sataiva pajamyaham. All of them is fine.
Because the second sentence begins with the word everyone. So it's almost, I may be wrong, but it's almost as if Krishna is saying that, yes, there are those who acknowledge me and therefore they surrender to me to whatever levels that they're ready to surrender to me unto. But then ultimately everybody is searching for happiness. They may just be searching for it in the wrong place, and therefore everyone, the word everyone is used there. Everyone follows my path in all respects. How do we understand the second sentence?
Well, here, this is a commentary by Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur. He says, someone may say, certainly, this is all Vishwanath Chakravarti. Certainly your exclusive devotees consider your birth and activities to be eternal. Others, however, don't. In that category are Gyanis and others who approach you to perfect their own process of Gyan and so on. And they do not consider your birth and activities eternal. Krishna responds to this consideration in the verse beginning, Ye yata. In whatever manner persons approach me, bhajanti, I reciprocate with them by giving them the fruits of their service. To those who think my Lord's birth and activities are eternal and who worship me with desire centered on my personal pastimes, and in this way experience great happiness, I reciprocate in kind. Being the Supreme Lord capable of doing anything, undoing anything, or making anything otherwise, I make such devotees my own parsadas, or perfect devotees. Descending to this world, descending to this world at suitable times along with these devotees and subsequently disappearing, I thus show my favor to them at every moment. To those Gyanis and others who consider my birth and activities temporary and my personal form a product of Maya, yet still try to reciprocate with me, I respond in kind by making them accept temporary births and activities again and again. I cause them to fall into the noose of Maya's illusion. In this way, I give them the reward they deserve, the miseries of birth and death. Different are those Gyanis, however, who consider my birth and activities eternal and my personal form. And anyway, it goes on like that. So I don't know. I think I wouldn't say we could definitely say that. It could be that he's saying that it's a kind of surrender. It's not necessarily the kind of surrender Prabhupada translates here, prapadyante as surrender, and parityajya as surrender in the 18th chapter. So I think here it says, as in English, as all surrender. So everyone's surrendering one way or another. And Krishna's rewarding them, just as we read from Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur. So I think that's his far as we can guess.
I feel, Prabhu, that everyone has a connotation to all. I mean, people who are surrendered, those people follows my path. That's what I feel.
What's that now? What's that?
No, Mataji asking, everyone means, people as all surrendered. The first sentence as all surrendered. The everyone has a connotation to the all. So whoever surrenders to Krishna, that everyone follows my path. That's what
everyone surrenders. When we go into the temple, we bow down to Krishna and we surrender. And the atheist bows down at the time of death, flat on the ground. So either you do dandavats willingly or you do dandavats unwillingly, but everyone does dandavats.
Yes.
Correct? Okay. What chapter are we on now? No, I'm joking. What verse are we on?
14 we have to start.
14. We have to go to 14.
Okay. Just a few things about 13. Prabhupada writes that in spite of his creating the 4 divisions, Brahman, Kshatriya, Vaishya, Sudra, Krishna does not belong to any of these divisions because he is not one of the conditioned souls. The tendency of a particular man toward work is determined by the modes of material nature which he has acquired. A person in Krishna consciousness, however, is above even the Brahmins. And as Krishna is transcendental to the system of, this is the last sentence, and as Krishna is transcendental to the system of the 4 divisions of human society, a person in Krishna consciousness is also transcendental to all divisions of human society, whether we consider the divisions of community, nation, or species. So we could get into a whole discussion about Varnashrama, which we won't here, but it's created by Krishna. It's created for peaceful. The tricky thing is it's created for a peaceful running of society. Everyone works together. The legs and the body don't complain. Why is the mouth getting so much attention? Us legs are always neglected. No, the legs are really important. The belly's really important. The arms are really important, and the brain is really important. So you need. I was thinking about this in my where I work for the federal government. It's a huge building. It takes up 2 huge blocks. It holds thousands and thousands of people. And my work is brain work, right? I'm talking to people and writing things. It's brain work. But if we did not have the men and women who cleaned the building every day, who took out the garbage every day, who fixed the lighting every day, right? All those, mop the floor every day, that place would be awful to work in 1 week. There would be garbage everywhere. It would be terrible smell. The air conditioning wouldn't work, right? So we need them. So it's not like, a Sudra. No, you need Sudras, you need Vaishyas, you need Kshatriyas, you need Brahmanas, you need everyone. And everyone should be respected as a spirit soul. And in one sense, it's really easy, Prabhupada says there's a natural tendency in everyone according to the modes of material nature which he has acquired. So just what you like to do, you do it for Krishna. That's in one sense the simple part of Varnashram connected with bhakti. Thank you, Vinit Kumar, for putting that verse, by the way. So, shall we go on? Text 14?
Yes.
Okay. Namam karmani limpanti, name karma phales biha. Iti mam yo bijanati, karma bir na sabhadyate. There is no work that affects me, nor do I aspire for the fruits of action. One who understands this truth about me also does not become entangled in the fruitive results of work. I love this idea. If you understand Krishna's body is eternal, you start going closer to having an eternal body. When you understand an aspect of Krishna's nature, you develop some of those qualities. One who understands this truth about me also does not become entangled in the fruitive reaction of work. So we are bound in this world because we have these independent desires for pleasure. And we try to act based on those desires. So our attempts, now listen to this is really kind of subtle but important. Those attempts to enjoy cause the modes of material nature to react, which results in our activities and the karma we get from those activities. Krishna's actions are totally different. Krishna does so many activities, but as he's doing them, he's totally aloof from the material world. Materially, he's desirous because all his activities are in the internal energy and are totally free from the modes of material nature. So he doesn't get any reaction to work. Okay, so this is, yeah, we have to understand the culture in which the Bhagavad Gita is spoken 5,000 years ago. Everyone was fully conscious of karma, was fully conscious of samsara, knew about the three modes of material nature, right? And therefore, this is for us, it's like, yeah, Krishna's transcendental to the modes of material nature. Okay, what kind of prasadam are they serving tonight? But it's a big thing to be free from the modes of material nature. We're like the fish who is just surrounded by water all the time, so we don't know anything else. So we're so affected by the modes of material nature. So we don't think it's such a big deal, but if we understand the modes are everywhere, and it's a big thing that Krishna is not affected by the modes, he creates the modes. It's a very important point, actually. And that's what this verse is saying. Also, let's see, in the purport, Prabhupada writes, Krishna creates and remains aloof from the creation, whereas the living entities are entangled in the fruitive results of material activities because of their propensity for lording it over material resources. Living entities are engaged in their respective activities of sense gratification. And these activities are not ordained by the Lord. For advancement of sense gratification, the living entities are engaged in the work of this world, and they aspire, some of them, for heavenly happiness after death. The Lord, being full in himself, has no attraction for so-called he doesn't want to go to the planets of the demigods. The heavenly demigods are only his engaged servants, bas. The proprietor never desires the low-grade happiness, such as the workers may desire. He is aloof from the material actions and reactions. And here's a very important sentence. It's about 4 sentences after the verse Nimitta Matram. Just listen to this very carefully. The Lord only gives them the proper facilities for such activities and the regulation of the material modes. But he, the Lord, is never responsible for their past and present activities. So you can't blame Krishna, he did not create a Hitler or a Mussolini or a Churchill or whatever. He's not responsible for their past and present activities. That's on us. A little later, next 2 sentences later, the Lord only gives him facilities through the agency of material nature, the external energy. Anyone who is fully conversant with all the intricacies of the law of karma or fruitive activities does not become affected by the results of his activities. Any questions, comments on that? This is pretty philosophical part here, but it's really an important part, just because the condition, so many people blame God. If God was all good, why did these terrible things happen in the world? So we have to blame ourselves. It's I don't know if it happens so much in India when I'm out, preaching, or somebody's reading one of Prabhupada's books, and they hear this word sinful activities. They often have a very Christian idea of sinful activities, that God is going to personally chastise you for that sinful activity. That's not the Vedic view. Krishna's too busy dancing with the gopis to care about our simple. We get through the material energy, through the 3 modes of material nature, etc. We get a reaction to our activities, but it's not like God giving it to us. We can become free from those reactions by taking shelter of Krishna. But we don't want to have that kind of Christian thing that, no, I did this terrible thing, now God hates me. Actually, Krishna always loves us. But we turn our back on Krishna. That's the problem. Krishna Buli Se Jeeva Nadir Bahir Mukh. We turned our back on Krishna. Oh, let's stop turning our back. Let's all face Krishna and say, Krishna, from this moment forward, I'm yours. I'm your devotee. And then Maya will say, really? Are you sure you want to do that? And will tempt us this way or that way. And we have to say, yes, my dear Maya, I'm totally sure. I don't want to be in your grip. I want to be at Krishna's lotus feet. All right. Text 15.
In this case, just one doubt, Prabhuji. Can we say that a person who is conversant with the law of karma is a Krishna conscious person, and that's why he is not affected by these actions and reactions? That's what it means?
No. You can be a very bad person and believe in the law of karma. To be free from reactions, we have to have bhakti.
Yes.
Krishna frees us. He wipes the slate clean when we chant his holy names nicely. But believing in the law of karma, there's a lot of people who believe in the law of karma who eat meat and have, do all kinds of stuff. So it's good to believe in the law of karma. But if you really believed in the law of karma, then you wouldn't do anything bad, right?
Yes.
But we studied that in the last chapter, that sometimes even we know what's right, we know what's wrong, and we still do what's wrong. That was Arjuna's question. Why does it seem that some people do the wrong thing as if like forced? And Krishna answered, Kama Esha, Krodha Esha, Rajaguna Samudbhava. We act in lusty desires, and then lust turns into anger. Okay. 15. Evam gyatva kritam karma purvayar api mamukshubi kuru karma eva tasmat tvam purvay purvataram kritam. All the liberated souls in ancient times acted with this understanding of my transcendental nature, all the things we just discussed. So many people in the past. Therefore, you should perform your duty, following in their footsteps. So, Mahajano Yena Katasa Panta, follow in the footsteps of the other great devotees. So Krishna has no attachment to enjoying in this world the fruits of work. And Arjuna should know this and fight for Krishna's pleasure. Because Krishna wants Arjuna to fight in knowledge of Krishna's supreme position and as seva, as an offering to him. Okay, so now the next 9 verses from 16 to 24. After hearing about Krishna's description of his own work, Krishna is going to explain now how work, karma, can be seen as inactivity, akarma. Because if you remember, previously Arjuna said he wanted to leave the battlefield and avoid the results of that karma, like a Gandhi does, like let's go to the forest. But Krishna is going to show him now how no karma occurs, comes to us when we work in transcendental knowledge. Okay, so.
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji.
Yes.
I'm so sorry to disturb you. I have a question. Like Krishna knows everything and Krishna controls everything. So even he knew like the Kauravas, they are doing wrong thing. He could have controlled their intelligence. I'm not like complaining, but I was thinking Krishna, like Nutcut, he just enjoys. Why not happy path? Why not different options? And people will have different mentalities, then give the gyan to go for the right one. Why not everyone the right one? Living like
because
Satyagar.
we have our free will. Love means we have free will. Otherwise, there's no reason, there's no meaning to love. Right?
Yeah, he has given the free will.
He's given the free will.
You,
and therefore it's up to us. I tried to say that 5 times today. We can't blame Krishna. It's up to us. We're in this material world. Now, Sadharnam V. Sankhi asked this question. We know Krishna loves us, but how do we realize or feel his love? We studied that in chapter 2, verse 59. We have to get that param dristva, a higher taste. And usually that comes about, especially by chanting Hare Krishna. We really sit down and focus on our japa with clear mind. And we chant from our heart, not from our head. So much time when we're chanting, our head is going, we got a list of, we think of all the things we have to do today and what I should have said to that other person when they said this to me yesterday. We have to get out of our head and get into our heart. And that alone can give us so much taste and acceptance of Krishna's love. Maybe you have seen this, Mahatma Prabhu's japa affirmations, different things we can think of. I happily and enthusiastically welcome the holy names every japa session. I easily chant my prescribed number of rounds with focus and attention. When I chant, I don't do anything else. I get to chant. I want to chant. I love to chant. I treat the Mahamantra as Radha and Krishna, fully present in sound. I receive and feel Krishna's presence, mercy, and love in his holy names. So I won't read them all. There's 20 of them. But here's the one I was saying. I am out of my mind and in my heart, fully present to the holy names. So that is one way to feel Krishna's love. Also to feel the love of his devotees. By serving his devotees, they give us blessings and mercy, and we feel we're coming closer to Krishna. And praying to Krishna, he's a person, we can pray to him. And hearing about Krishna, we heard that in the last verse of last week. Vita Raga Vayakrada Manmaya Mam Upasvita. How did that go? 4:10. So being freed from attachment, fear, and anger, being fully absorbed in me and taking refuge in me, many, many persons in the past became purified by knowledge of me, and then they attained transcendental love for me. So hearing about Krishna, anyone that you love, if you love your child, you have no problem, talking about, oh, my child did this, my child did that, my child's walking now, my child's talking now, this or that. It's that their Leela is very interesting to you because they're your child and you love them. If you tell a total stranger on the street about your child, they're like, okay, every child's like that. Who cares? So hearing about Krishna is another way to answer that. Okay, so, whoops, I just lost my place again. So I think we're on 17. Oh no, we're on 16, right? No.
Yeah, 16, yeah.
Kim karma, kim akarmeti, kavayop yatra mohitaha.
Hare Krishna Prabhuji, 15 we have not covered.
15, I think we.
No.
Yes, we did that.
No, 15 covered, Mataji. 16.
Okay. Sorry.
Tate karma pravakshami, yajgyatva mokshase shubhat. Even the intelligent, so even if you're intelligent, are bewildered. That means the Jnani, even the Jnani are bewildered in determining what is action and what is inaction. Now I shall explain to you what action is, knowing which you shall be liberated from all misfortune. So now in the next verse, Krishna adds vikarma. In this one, he just said action and inaction. Now he adds forbidden action. 17. Karmano yapi bodhavyam cha vikarmana. Akarmanas cha bodhavyam. Gahana karmano gatihi. The intricacies of action are very hard to understand. Therefore, one should know properly what is action, what is forbidden action, vikarma, and what is inaction. And Prabhupada writes in the first sentence, if one is serious about liberation from material bondage, one has to understand the distinctions between action, inaction, and unauthorized action. So karma refers to activities according to the Vedic injunctions. Usually we would use the word karma kanda. Vikarma means activities that are prohibited, that we should not do and give bad karma. And akarma refers to actions that are performed for Krishna's pleasure. No material reaction, good or bad. So those are the three. Let's see so now that he's introduced vikarma, Krishna goes back to making that distinction between karma and akarma. Karmanya karma ya pasyed, akarmani cha karma ya. Sa buddhimam manusyesu, sayukta Krishna karmakrit. One who sees inaction in action, and action in inaction is intelligent among men, and he is transcendental in the transcendental position, although engaged in all sorts of activities. So Prabhupada says that a person acting in Krishna consciousness is free from the bonds of karma. His activities are all for Krishna's pleasure, and therefore he does not enjoy or suffer any effects of work. So that's the akarma person. So in action, that refers to bhakti, where activities performed only for Krishna's pleasure. So we as Krishna's servants, we do not receive material reactions for our service because it's done for Krishna's pleasure. And action in inaction is the opposite. So a sannyasi, let's say, without transcendental knowledge of Krishna, so like a Mayavadi sannyasi, or may appear not to be performing work, but as a soul, he can't avoid either activity or the result of those activities. Everyone's doing something. So, for example, say a sannyasi who's renounced this word, they still have to breathe, they still have to eat, they still step on living entities as they walk. So, all those kind of activities have no transcendental basis for him, and thus he gets a reaction to them. But if we're walking to the temple, we're walking to one Sankirtan, we may step on an ant. No karma for that, because our activity is for Krishna's pleasure. So all of us, every one of us is unavoidably active. And as we're hearing in the Gita, artificial tries towards inactivity usually lead to bigger danger. Because if you don't do activities and you still have your material mind, you're gonna, it's incompatible. So Krishna further explains this in the next verse. Yasya sarve samarambha kama sankalpa varjitaha jnanagni dagha karmanam tam ahu panditam buddha. One is understood to be in full knowledge, whose every endeavor is devoid of desire for sense gratification. Now, turn that around, you could say one is in full knowledge, whose every endeavor is to please Krishna. He is said by sages to be a worker for whom the reaction of work have been burned up by the fire of perfect knowledge. And Prabhupada begins the purport, only a person in full knowledge can understand the activities of a person in Krishna consciousness. Because the person in Krishna consciousness is devoid of all kinds of sense gratificatory propensities, it is to be understood that he has burned up the reactions of his work by perfect knowledge of his constitutional position as the eternal servitor of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So it really takes one to know one. It's hard to understand sometimes devotees because they're not doing anything for sense gratification. By the way, Vira Duti Mataji, there's no difference basically. Nishkam means without, nish and basically mean the same thing. So ultimately, well, let me, in the reference that Prabhupada is giving, akarma is bhakti, and nishkam karma is also buddhi yoga or bhakti yoga in Prabhupada's use here, although nishkam karma is not quite on the level of bhakti. But for all intents and purposes, nishkam and akam, same. Or as they say in America, 6 of one and half a dozen of the other. Yeah. It's sometimes hard for a non-devotee to understand the mentality, the lifestyle, the way a devotee acts in this world. I know in my job, nobody can figure out why, because I have calls in the morning, I have calls in the evening, doing ISKCON Resolve work, teaching Bhakti, and they think, after work, you're just supposed to relax, have something to drink, watch some television. And when they say, how was your weekend? And I always say, my weekend is much busier than my weekday. My weekday, I just do my job. My weekend, there's so many things going on in ISKCON on the weekend. And people, why do you do that? Why would you want to spend you're supposed to relax, you're supposed to recharge your batteries on the weekend, and you're running around doing all kinds of stuff. It's not always easy to understand why a devotee does what they do. Okay, any questions up to here, up to 19?
So to continue with what Mataji had asked the question on whether Nishkama Karma is the same as Akarma, but the results, sans bhakti is different. Am I right?
Well, what the term bhakti is different?
I mean, performing Nishkarma yoga without bhakti, the result is
totally different. Yeah. I mean, the two aren't usually used in the same. As far as I can remember, Nishkam, they're just used in different contexts. But akarma is an activity that does not give you any karma, and that is bhakti, right? Nishkam. Yeah, actually, I'm glad you brought this up because I didn't answer the question properly. Nishkam may be the mode of goodness, just kama, you're not having a lot of material desires, but you still in the mode of goodness, or even doing karma yoga, you still might get some reaction. This akarma is bhakti. There's no reaction, good or bad. See, that's for a devotee, what is that? Prabhupada had that saying, wet stool or dry stool, it's all stool. Anyone know the Bengali? Something like Narambu, Shukambu, Shabu, Baba, something like that. But anyway, the idea is that good karma, bad karma, devotee doesn't want any of that. They don't want to go to the heavenly planets. They don't want good karma. They want akarma. No good karma, no bad karma, nothing of this world. That's different than nishkama karma. Sorry, I wasn't thinking straight when I answered before. Does that help? Okay. Any other questions? All right. Let us take a 5-minute break. Just stretch. It's been more than an hour. Okay. We'll be back at 33 minutes after the hour. So, verse 20. Tvaktva karma phala sangam nitya tripto nirashayaha karman yabhi pravritto pi noiva kinchit karoti saha. Abandoning all attachment to the results of his activities. Ever satisfied and independent, he performs no fruitive actions, although engaged in all kinds of undertakings. I know one devotee Prabhupada named Nitya Tripta, always satisfied. Purport. This freedom from the bondage of action is possible only in Krishna consciousness, when one is doing everything for Krishna. A Krishna conscious person acts out of pure love for the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and therefore he has no attraction for the results of his actions. So he's just just Krishna's pleasure, Krishna's pleasure, Krishna's pleasure. He is not even attached to his personal maintenance, for everything is left to Krishna. Nor is he anxious to secure things, nor to protect things already in his possession. He does his duty to the best of his ability and leaves everything to Krishna. Such an unattached person is always free from the resultant reactions of good and bad. It is as though he were not doing anything. This is the result of akarma, or action without fruitive reactions. Any other action, therefore, devoid of Krishna consciousness, is binding upon. So at the end, he glorified all these things about doing everything for Krishna, but then he says, any other action, therefore, devoid of Krishna consciousness, is binding upon the worker. And that is the real aspect of vikarma as explained here and before. So we should not give up our work unless we should be satisfied by doing our duty, our work dutifully. We should give up the attachment to the fruits of work. So this describes someone who's aiming for perfection. And then the next two verses talk about someone who's actually achieved perfection. So Nirasir Yatta Chittatma Fakta Sarva Paritgraha Shariram Kevalam Karma Kurvan Up Napnoti Plebisa. Such a person of understanding acts with mind and intelligence perfectly controlled, gives up all sense of proprietorship over his possessions, and acts only for the bare necessities of life. Thus working, he is not affected by sinful reactions. And so Prabhupada explains this, he says, let me find that. He moves exactly like a part of a machine. As a machine part requires oiling and cleaning for maintenance, so a Krishna conscious man maintains himself by his work, just to remain fit for action in the transcendental loving service of the Lord. Okay, so let's continue to the next one. Yet richa labha santushto tvandvatito vimatsaraha sama siddha vasiddho cha kritvapi na vipadyate. He who is satisfied with gain which comes of its own accord, who is free from duality and does not envy, who is steady in both success and happiness, is never entangled, although performing action. Halfway down the purport, Prabhupada says, however, for the service of the Lord, he can participate in any kind of action without being disturbed by the duality of the material world. The duality of the material world is felt in terms of heat and cold, or misery and happiness. A Krishna conscious person is above duality because he does not hesitate to act in any way for the satisfaction of Krishna. Therefore, he is steady both in success and in failure. These signs are visible when one is fully in transcendental knowledge. So we don't hesitate to anything for the satisfaction of Krishna. So if somebody says, Prabhu, can you take out could you clean the bathroom? Yes. Krishna's temple bathroom? Yes. Not that, oh, I have a big Brahmin thread, I can't do that. No, it's, whatever service Krishna gives us, we say thank you. We don't think that, just like Prabhupada said about Vrindavan, Krishna Balaram Mandir, that in the Krishna and Balaram, Krishna is black marble, Balaram is white marble, and the floor in the courtyard is black marble and white marble. But he said that the person cleaning the floor in the temple room gets just as much devotional credit as the person worshiping the deity. Same, but it's bhakti. It's not that one, oh, the pujari is very special and he or she gets to work. No. Same. The the person who's cleaning the marble floor or the marble deities. Same. That's the absolute nature of bhakti. So our mentality basically is, Krishna, just give me service. Whatever service you give me, TK. Okay. Any comments, questions? Okay, then Gatas Sangasya Muktasya Jnana Vashtita Chetasaha Jagyaya Charita Karma Samagraham Praviliyate. The work of a man who is unattached to the modes of material nature and who's fully situated in transcendental knowledge merges into transcendence. So here Prabhupada, translates Jagyaya as for the sake of Krishna, for the sake of Yagna. And as we just said, when we do service for Krishna's pleasure, it's already transcendental. Now, what we're going to hear in following verses are a variety of sacrifices. And these sacrifices, the key thing to remember, because there's all different things and they're Vedic sacrifices, this and that, but the key thing to remember is that these sacrifices all have knowledge, which is the title of this chapter, transcendental knowledge, as the ultimate goal. So it's really important to remember how important transcendental knowledge is. Knowledge about Krishna, knowledge about the soul, knowledge about the material world, knowledge about the process of bhakti. These all really help our practice. Okay. So the next verse, Krishna is kind of summarizing his point about akarma by describing, the absolute quality of a sacrifice performed in spiritual consciousness. Brahmarpanam brahmahabir brahmagno brahmana hutam brahmayavatena kantavya brahmakarma samadhina. A person who is fully absorbed in Krishna consciousness is sure to attain the spiritual kingdom because of his full contribution to spiritual activities, in which the consummation is absolute, and that which is offered is of the same spiritual nature. In the middle of the purport, Prabhupada writes the word Brahma means spiritual. The Lord is spiritual, and the rays of his transcendental body are called Brahma Jyoti, his spiritual effulgence. Everything that exists is situated in that Brahma Jyoti, but when the Jyoti is covered by Maya, or sense gratification, is called material. This material veil can be removed at once by Krishna consciousness. Thus, the offering for the sake of Krishna consciousness, the consuming agent of such an offering or contribution, the process of consumption, the contributor, and the results are all combined together, Brahman, or the absolute truth. So, when we work in transcendental knowledge, the results are absolute when we work for Krishna, because everything's done for his pleasure. So to get a little into the details of this, the contribution, the process of consumption, the contributor, and the results, those are all necessary aspects of any yajna. But the ultimate goal of all the sacrifices that Krishna is now going to list is transcendental knowledge, pleasure of Krishna. They help the practitioner advance in transcendental knowledge. Of course, for us, we can read Bhagavad Gita, but this is, in the Vedic system. So some yogis perfectly worship the demigod. Daivam eva pare jnanam yoginam parchupasate. Brahmagno vapare yagnam Jnane Vaivo Juvati. Some yogis perfectly worship the demigods by offering different sacrifices to them. And some offer sacrifices in the fire of the Supreme Brahman. And now the next one is about one's position in Varnashram. Shotrabdini Triyan Yante Samyaman Mag Nishu Juvati Sabdhad in Vishayan Anya Indrayag Ishu Juvati. Some unadulterated brahmacharis sacrifice the hearing process and the senses in the fire of the mental control, and others, the regulated householders, sacrifice the objects of the senses in the fire of the senses. Prabhupada writes that a brahmachari hears only words concerning Krishna consciousness. Hearing is the basic principle for understanding, and therefore the pure brahmachari engages fully in Harinam Anukirtanam, chanting and hearing the glories of the Lord. And a little later, similarly, the householder who have some license for sense gratification perform such acts with great restraint. Sex life, intoxication, and meat eating are general tendencies of human society, but a regulated householder does not indulge in unrestricted sex life or any other sense gratification. So Krishna next talks about Ashtanga Yoga. Sarvanindriya karmani, prana karmani chapare, atma samyama, yoga now, juvati jnanati. Others who are interested in achieving self-realization through control of the mind and senses offer the function of all the senses and of the life air as oblations into the fire of the controlled mind. And Prabhupada gives a little explanation. He says this prat yag atma is withdrawn from activities in matter. The senses interact with the sense objects, like the ear for hearing, eyes for seeing, nose for smelling, tongue for tasting, hand for touching, and all of them are thus engaged in activities outside of the self. So, in little Ayurveda here, in the body, there's 10 kinds of air, 5 major, 5 minor. Controlling them controls the mind, which is the point of this verse. And of course, we're going to hear a lot more about Ashtanga Yoga in the 6th chapter. So 4 more yagnas are mentioned in 28. Dravya yagnas tapa yagna, yoga yagnas tatapare, swadhyaya jnana yagnascha, yataya samsita vrata. Having accepted strict vows, some become enlightened by sacrificing their possessions, others by performing severe austerities, by practicing the yoga of the Eightfold Mysticism, or by studying the Vedas to advance in transcendental knowledge. Prabhupada writes at the end of the purport, all these yogis are faithfully engaged in different types of sacrifice and are seeking a higher status of life. Krishna consciousness, however, is different from these because it is a direct service to the Supreme Lord. Krishna consciousness cannot be attained by any one of the above mentioned types of sacrifices, but can only be attained by the mercy of the Lord and his bona fide devotees. Therefore, Krishna consciousness is transcendental. So it's putting all the ones that we're hearing about in context of, they lead to a higher status of life, but Krishna consciousness is in a totally different category. So these sacrifices elevate the participant, But like I said, pure Krishna consciousness is above it all. So the next verse talks about pranayama and ashtanga yoga. Apane juvati pranam, prane panam tatapare, pranapana kati rudha pranayama parayana apare hi ni yutahara prana praneshu juvati. Still others who are inclined to the process of breath restraint to remain in trance practice the offering of the movement of the outer going breath into the incoming and the incoming breath into the outgoing. This is all pranayama. And thus at last remain in trance, stopping all breathing. Others curtail the eating process. Offer the outgoing breath into itself as a sacrifice. So now in the next verse, Krishna gives a summary of all these different sacrifices. Sarvepi yete yagna vido yagna shipita kalmasaha yagna shishtam rita bhujo yanti brahma sanatanam. All these performers, so all these things that we've heard about, who know the meaning of sacrifice, become cleansed of sinful reactions. And having tasted the nectar of the results of sacrifices, they advance towards the supreme eternal atmosphere. Beginning of Prabhupada's purport from the foregoing explanation of different types of sacrifice, namely sacrifice of one possession, study of the Vedas, of philosophical doctrines, and performance of the yoga system, it is found that the common aim of all is to control the senses. Sense gratification is the root cause of material existence. Therefore, unless and until one is situated on a platform apart from sense gratification, there's no chance of being elevated to the eternal platform of full knowledge, full bliss, and full life. Now, there's a philosophical reason for this, that sense gratification puts us in the center instead of Krishna in the center. It is ultimately a sign of our envy of Krishna. So it's not just, gambling on a cricket match. It's a way of saying, I'm going to try to enjoy separate from you, Krishna. So ultimately, all those acts of sense gratification we think we're doing on our own time, Krishna knows, and it's keeping us from him. Okay, let's see if there's anything else before we. All right, any questions, comments up to now on I went through those pretty quickly.
Hare Krishna, Prabhu.
Yes.
The difference between Nishkama Karma Yogi and Bhakti Yogi is clearly given in, I think, 22nd about Bhakti Yogi. The Nishkama Karma Yogi is not attached to the results, but he is attached to the work. He is attached to the service.
Right.
But Bhakti Yogi is beyond that. He is not attached to the results, and also he is not attached to the
very good
service. He can do any kind of service. Is that correct?
Excellent. Yes, that's correct.
Thank you.
Now in the chat, Hare Krishna Prabhuji, here is, that means just knowledge and devoid of desire for sense gratification is enough to burn karma. Action like devotional service. One is understood to be in full knowledge, whose every endeavor is devoid of the desire for sense gratification. But what that is saying indirectly means one is understood to be in full knowledge, whose every endeavor is in bhakti. Because you can only really be free from sense gratification when you're in love. Otherwise, you're restraining the senses, but you're not, because I just said sense gratification, it's not just the regulated principle. They're signs of our separation from Krishna. So when we're connected with Krishna, then we're devoid of desire for sense gratification. And that perfect knowledge that's mentioned here, we remember verse 10 of this chapter, that they all became purified by knowledge of me, and thus they attained love for me. So it doesn't mean that knowledge and devotee is enough. Karma is burnt by bhakti. Karmani nidahati kintu to bhakti bhaja. There may be some mechanical ways to get rid of karma, but the problem is, anyone know what the problem is? Anyone remember? What's the problem from Nectar of Instruction? What's the problem of just getting free from reactions? The desire for sense gratification may still be there in the heart. Only bhakti actually gets rid of the desire. Okay, I hope that helps, Murari Madhava. Okay, so we did 19 just now. Is that right? Or we did 20 also? We did 20.
Yeah, we
What
have
do we have?
the last two, Prabhu, 31 and 32.
30.
What are we up to?
We have 2 shlokas left in this chapter, 31 and 32.
31?
Yes, we read up to 30.
Oh, right, yeah, sorry. But this chapter goes
It's
up
42
to
verses.
40.
Yeah, sorry.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, okay. So we're up to 30. That's what I meant, instead of 20, we're up to 30. Right? So let's see, what should we do? Let's do at least these 2 more. Okay, so 30. Sarve pi yeta yagna vido yagna shapita kalmasaha yagya shistamrita bujo yanti brahma sanatan. All these performers who know the meaning of sacrifice become cleansed of sinful reactions, and having tasted the nectar of the results of sacrifices, they advance towards the supreme eternal atmosphere. And 31 is interesting, it's short. Nayam lokos yagnasya kuton yakuru satamam. O best of the Kuru dynasty, without sacrifice, how can one can never live happily on this planet or in this life? What then of the next? Purport. Whatever form of material existence one is in, one is invariably ignorant of his real situation. In other words, existence in the material world is due to the multiple reactions to our sinful lives. Ignorance is the cause of sinful life, and sinful life is the cause of one's dragging on in material existence. And the last sentence, a life of Krishna consciousness is therefore the solution to all the problems of material existence. Evam bahu vidha jagna vitata brahmano mukhe karma jan viditan sarvan evam gyatva vimokshase. All these different types of sacrifice are approved by the Vedas, and all of them are born of different types of work. Knowing them as such, you will become liberated. And then the next verse says, Shreya dravya mayad jagnaj jnana jagna parantapa sarvam karma kilam parta jnane pari samavyate. O chastiser of the enemy, the sacrifice performed of knowledge is better than the mere sacrifice of material possessions. After all, O son of Prita, all sacrifices of work culminate in transcendental knowledge. And then Prabhupada summarizes this in the last sentence. He says, depending on differences in consciousness, sacrificial activities are sometimes called karma kanda and sometimes jnana kanda, the pursuit of truth. It is better when the end is knowledge. So we may do a karma kanda sacrifice, give up limited amounts of sense gratification so that we can increase them later 10 times, right? Or 100 times. So that's sacrifice definitely in the material realm. And such sacrifice is done with very little knowledge of the difference between matter and spirit, or body and soul, and with no understanding of Krishna's position. So that sacrifice is inferior to a sacrifice performed in knowledge. Sacrifices performed in knowledge lead one to higher platforms of transcendental knowledge. So the next verse, Krishna, tells us how we get real transcendental knowledge. And I'll see if you have any questions or comments.
Hare Krishna, Prabhu.
Yes, Prabhu.
How the sacrifice leads to transcendental knowledge? Can you please explain, Prabhu?
How does it lead to well, it depends on which sacrifice you do.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, if you do the sacrifice of swadhyaya, the sacrifice of reading and studying, that's going to lead to transcendental knowledge, right? But also sometimes just purifying the heart by giving up some sense gratification to please Krishna, it increases the desire for attaining transcendental knowledge. This is explained right in the beginning of the Bhagavatam, Canto 1, Chapter 2. Let's see, is it out there? Let's see, what's that verse? A little further. So many famous verses in that chapter. Oh yeah, here we go. Okay, so I'll just show you this just to give you a further understanding. This is from Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 1, Chapter 2, verse 16. I won't read the Sanskrit. O twice-born sages, by serving those devotees who are completely free from all vice, great service is done. By such service, one attains an affinity for hearing the message of Vasudeva. So when we do some service, some sacrifice, then we get a desire to hear, and that gives us transcendental knowledge. Okay. Other questions, comments?
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji.
Yes.
Prabhuji, in any way, bhakti, jnana becomes hindrance for bhakti, Prabhu. Like in Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, it is said, jnana karma adi anavratam. So, and many other, even in the case of Uddhava also, Uddhava with gopis, how jnana becomes hindrance to bhakti? Just I wanted to know.
How jnana?
Jnana becomes hindrance. Like,
well, it depends. You see, the problem is the word gyan or jnana can refer to different things. That's the problem. Okay, so you can have knowledge, just like this chapter. Not like the knowledge of Krishna is bhakti, but knowledge when used in the idea of jnana yoga, like verses 11 to 30 of the second chapter of the Gita, the difference between the body and the soul. It's not bhakti, it's just knowledge, the difference between the body and the soul, but it can lead to bhakti if we if somebody asks the next thing, okay, if I'm the soul, not the body, what does the soul do? And then you say the soul does bhakti. But the problem with Gyan, that kind of Gyan, is that it can also harden the heart. That we've studied in Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu. It can also, because if you're just, I'm not this body, I'm spirit, soul, life is temporary, it's full of miseries, to kalayama shashvatam, it's a terrible place. If you don't get bhakti along with that, it can kind of harden the heart. It can become really like a tough Jnani, just goes to the forest and just roughs it out. Whereas the devotee is more like, oh, Krishna, please help me. Please let me serve you. It's a very different mood. The Jnani, it's all by one's own sense control, by one's own determination, by one's own willpower, things come about. But for the devotee, it's like, Krishna, I have no willpower, I have no knowledge, I just need your blessings. Please help me, I'm your eternal servant, please let me serve you. It's an incredibly different mood. So that kind of Gyan, it's not that it can lead to bhakti, right? Just like we studied the second chapter, it's actually inspiring. I'm not this body, life is temporary. And for a devotee, they say, okay, life is temporary, therefore I should serve Krishna. So the devotee connects it with Krishna. But Gyan in terms of, because it can lead to hard-heartedness and it also can lead to a more impersonal or even Mayavadi understanding of the absolute. So it's not, therefore, Anyabhilashita sunyam jnana karma anavritam. That kind of jnana, we don't want that. Rather, anukuyena Krishna anu, Srilana Bhakti. We want bhakti, following the footsteps of the previous teachers, and serving Krishna favorably. Is that all right?
Is a Gnana Mishrita Bhakti, is that what is recommended to? Or only pure Bhakti? Or Gnana Mishrita Bhakti? Or
Jnana Mishra Bhakti is Mishra.
Yeah.
Why you want sand in your sweet rice? In your kheer?
Like otherwise, Bhakti takes to the mood of something like sahajiyas, like behavior.
No, we don't want to be sahajiyas. Why should we be sahajiyas? Yes, so that's a good point. It's a good point. And therefore, look at Prabhupada's name, Bhakti Vedanta. Right? He had all the Vedantic knowledge and applied it in bhakti. So also we use Gyan a lot in our preaching, right? We generally don't go up to people and say, oh, you should worship Krishna, he plays the flute, he has a beautiful yellow dhoti, his favorite gopi is Srimati Radharani, and we don't, that's not usually how we start. Usually we say, you're why are you wasting your life? Why are you just endeavoring for sense gratification? Life is temporary. You're going to get so much karma for what you're eating. Why not become a vegetarian and then offer it to Krishna? Well, we often use Gyan in our preaching because it wakes people up, but we don't stop there. We don't stop at you're not your body. Then we say, what are you? You're a spirit soul. So if it's Mishra, means is it mixed with Mayavadi theory, then no, we reject it. If it's mixed with hard-hearted austerity, then we reject it. But if it's knowledge of the soul that helps us in practicing our bhakti, then we accept it. And there's a lot of Gyan in the Bhagavad Gita. There's Gyan in the Bhagavatam, in Uddhava Gita, in Kapila Dev. Yeah, so it's there for a reason, but it should be used appropriately. Is that all right?
Thank you.
Hare Krishna,
Okay.
Prabhu. I think another thing, jnana leads to sometimes pride as well, right?
To what?
That also
Pride.
to pride.
Yes.
So
yes.
that also creates a problem in progression of bhakti.
Yes.
So that's the reason why I think in that shloka it has been mentioned that kind of jnana is not favorable for us.
Yeah, well, yes, and again, it depends on how we define gyan, but you're right, it can lead to pride. Definitely. Thank you, Prabhu. Thank you, Amal. All right, so I think we've done enough for today. The homework assignment for next week, give me a second here, I just want to check one thing. Okay, is obviously we're going to finish this chapter. I mean, the next section is either 1 to 9 or 10 to 20 in the 5th chapter. Let's see if we have, let's be realistic. Let's read up to verse 9. That's all for next week then. Pretty easy assignment. Okay.